Hey everyone, Mitch coming in from the Commander's Core studio. Welcome to the show. Okay, so today's episode has been one in the making for a year now. That's right, the 2024 tier rankings for brand new commanders from 2024. On this episode, I am taking the top commanders from the year, the commanders that finished in either S or A tier. And yeah, some things fluctuate, some opinions fluctuate throughout the year, but now this is the official one. Here we go. The most powerful commanders of this year as ranked by me, 100% based on my own opinion, and if your opinion differs, that's okay, so yeah, comment below with how I'm wrong or right. Anyways, let's jump into it. And let's start things off with Arabella, Abandoned Doll. This is an uncommon commander, but with an uncommonly uncommon ability, a 1/3 artifact creature toy for 2 mana in Boros. Whenever it attacks, it deals X damage to each opponent, you gain X life for X, the number of creatures you control power 2 or less. Again, the context of this episode is S is the best, D is the worst, but it is all very powerful commanders again. Ones that either finished S or A previously, but all now compared to each other. All within the context of 2024, the vacuum of 2024. Where does this finish? Well, at the end of the day, I think Arabella is a powerful commander in its own right, absolutely. It's just outclassed by a lot of the commanders in this episode, I believe. I don't think it's in the worst tier, though. I think it's going to be a C tier commander. Again, you go low to the ground creatures, you go damage doubling effects, you go like life gain advantages as well. It's cool. It's not the most powerful thing in the world, though. Next up, though, Bristle Bill. I always have to say it that way. Spine Sower, for whatever reason. A 2/2 plant druid for 2 mana in green. Landfall. In Lander's Battlefield control, you get a counter target creature by paying 5 mana in green, double the number of counters on each creature you control. Now, this is one that has a lot of potential because, well, counters have a lot of different support cards, essentially, when it comes to commander, and even just in a mono green deck. That is the most kind of counter-heavy culture, I would say, when it comes to, a color. And also when it comes to that as well, while doubling up the number of counters on things, that can be incredibly impactful, even game-breaking in certain ways. Yeah, there's even some combos that work with it too. That being said, it does require some setup to kind of get things going, I would say. So because of the setup that it requires, it still, I believe, is more powerful than Arabella. Sorry, Arabella. But yeah, I think it is a B tier commander overall. Again, more support and also, again, combo potential. And again, a low to the ground commander. We're starting off with these going the lowest of the ground commanders to the most expensive commanders when it comes to mana value. But yeah, Bristle Bill is expensive money-wise for a reason. $33 for this version. My goodness. That being said, next up, Gav, Scaled Scourge, so cute, so tiny, but so deadly. 3/2 Lizard Mercenary for 2 mana in Rakdos. Ward, pay 2 life. Other creatures you control enter with additional counter on them for each opponent lost life this turn. Whenever you cast a Lizard spell, 1 damage target opponent. Here's the thing. Whenever you see a commander that literally is like, hey, creatures enter with a +1/+1 counter on them, yeah, that is one that has the potential to very easily be broken. Now, you need to actually at least have an opponent lose life. That's all you need to do. An opponent loses 1 life, that's all that matters. Yeah, that's all that matters, essentially, right? That's all you really need to do. Now, you could, build, all lizard deck, sure, and then do damage that way, but don't do that. I mean, not don't do that, but if you're doing the most powerful version of this, which is how I'm scaling these, from a casual, powerful, casual perspective, like a 7, if that's actually a thing, a 7 or 8, it comes to deck style-wise, right? And every deck's a 7, that's a joke. That being said, this one, you just need to essentially have persist creatures. That's literally all you need to do. You go get impact tremors, you go get persist creatures. I mean, actually, you get murderous red crap, and there you go. You just win. You essentially have, okay, my creature, and a free sacrifice outlet, and it dies. It comes back with a -1/-1 counter on it, and a +1 counter on it. Those cancel out, and then you do that infinitely. So yeah, this, again, is a low-to-the-ground, infinite combo maker that is in the perfect color combination for what it wants. I mean, obviously, 5 color would be better, giving you access to everything, but when it comes to persist creatures and also tutors, of course, yeah, being in this combination with impact tremors type cards as well, yeah, it's going to do a lot of work for you. So actually, Gev Scaled Scourge, I think I actually am going to throw you up for now in the A tier, and I do reserve the right to change these as things go on. That being said, I do think Gev, some people might just underrate it because it's a cute little lizard, and also when you read it too, you're like, okay, I don't want to build Lizard Tribal, so, like, I don't want to go in that way. So, yeah, it can't be that powerful, right? No, you ignore that last part. You just completely ignore that last part. That part does not really matter at all. And all of a sudden, this is a crazy powerful commander. Next up, Kitsa Otter Ball Elite, a 1/3 Vigilant Otter Wizard for 2 mana. In blue, prowess, tap, draw a card, discard a card, so Merfolk Looter basically. Pay 2 tap, copy target in-source spell you control, choose a card to the copy. Activate only if its power is 3 or greater. This is somewhat similar to some other commander that I'm going to talk about here in a bit, but not quite as powerful. You have that copy ability, which is quite nice. It is good for when you do have... I mean, you could do some broken things with this potentially, like dramatic reversal type things, right? You could potentially do that, but you do need a more setup to actually get there because you have to pay the mana into it to actually do that. So you need the mana for that, the mana for that. You need ways to actually do that. You could go, you know, with extra turns as well. That is probably the most powerful way to do it. The most powerful way. You probably just throw like all the combos in the deck essentially. Getting it to 3 power. Quite easy. I mean, you probably just have like some equipment in the deck as well to do that instead of counting on casting multiple spells in a turn to get there. That being said, with that prowess, I should say. So overall, I think this one is probably... Oh, Kitsa, where are you at? I think I'm going to throw Kitsa... I think, in the C tier. It's like C or D. It might be the first D tier commander that we talk about. Again, within the context of the most powerful commanders from this year. Let's put it in the C tier for now. Again, copying spells can just be very powerful. Literally, if you just chuck in, like, all the extra turn spells in the deck, and you're like, oh, okay, cool, yeah. Extra turn spells and ramp, and all of a sudden, oh, okay, cool, I get 2 extra turns. You probably just win if you get 2 extra turns. Because then next turn, you're like, oh, okay, cool, I cast another extra turn spell. Then copy that again. You probably have other copying effects, too. Moving on. Kudo King among bears. 2/2 bear for 2 mana in Selesnya. Other creatures have base power known as 2/2 and are bears that show their types. This one, again, when I first read it, I think when a lot of people first read it, it was like, oh, okay, cool, yeah, make sure the creatures and the bears, that's really cool, yeah, 2/2s, all right, so you just get a bunch of tokens in play and they're all 2/2s instead of 1/1s, awesome, yeah. Oh, wait, this impacts my opponents as well. Yeah, your opponent's creatures, no matter how big they are, again, a massive Eldrazi that is game-ending 10/10, and it's like, now it's a 2/2 Eldrazi bear. You're welcome. So yeah, this is a giant, pump effect for your team in a way. Not giant, but, you know, it turns your 1/1s into 2/2s, or your 0/1s or whatever into 2/2s. Awesome, cool, good for you. But your opponents, it's a giant anti-anthem for them, essentially, where it takes all their creatures down to your size. So again, you go wide with a bunch of tiny creatures, and they're the exact same size as your opponent's largest creatures that are now super tiny. Of course, it works well with something like an Elesh Norn that is an anti-anthem itself, which makes it so your opponents can't even play creatures, basically, for the most part. And of course, it works well with anthems. Like, just at a base level, right? Just get a bunch of anthems in play, and you're like, okay, cool, yeah, my bears are, 6/6s. Your bears are still 2/2s. So, yeah, I'm going to swing at you and take you out. You, of course, could go, like, really heavy into, like, hate bear strategy as well. I'd say, overall, Kudo King among bears, like, if you are going, like, the most intense version of Kudo, which can be absolutely brutal, because, yeah, of course, you do have tutors for creatures in these colors, and you go get Elesh Norn, and again, you kind of lock down the board, essentially. Yeah, that's like a one-off thing, but again, if you literally just chuck a bunch of anthems in there as well and go wide, it's going to be tough for your opponents to stop you once you're set up properly. They really have to deal with Kudo, and if they don't, they're going to be in trouble. So I'd say this one probably overall is a B-tier commander. Again, very, very impactful. Moving on. Azlask, the Swelling Scourge, a 2/2 Eldrazi for 3 mana. When it or other colorless creature you control dies, you can experience counter by paying Wooburg creature control, get +X/+X until end of turn, X the number of experience counters you have. Signs and spawns you control gain indestructible neither 1 until end of turn. This is one where, like, the +X/+X is nice, but really doesn't matter all that much. I mean, it is nice. I'm not saying it doesn't matter, okay? I mean, I kind of am. The thing that really matters, though, is literally giving your creatures indestructible, but more importantly, Annihilator 1. By giving those signs and spawns Annihilator 1, which can stack. So if you activate this multiple times, it's Annihilator 1, then another Annihilator 1, then another Annihilator 1. So if you, let's just say you put 10 mana into this, right? Wooburg twice, double Wooburg, and all of a sudden your creatures have Annihilator 1 twice, basically Annihilator 2, right? You swing an opponent, they lose. They literally just lose. It doesn't matter that you are dealing damage to them. That fact does not matter. They're not going to be able to sacrifice enough things to keep things on the board. Their board is gone. They are literally just out of the game by you just swinging at them inherently. It doesn't matter what their defenses are, unless they literally have like 80 tokens in play, they are just gone. So yes, like Eldrazi tribal with this one, but also like ramping. it can be pretty gross. Now, is it as gross as some of the other commanders we've talked about so far? Which, again, might be kind of ironic, you know, when you think about, like, Gev versus this one. Gev can just combo pretty quickly. All right, it really just can combo pretty quickly for a deck built around it. I'd say this one is probably, it's a very strong B tier. It's probably like a B plus, like, once you get things going. But yeah, I'm going to go with a B tier commander. Again, we've got a lot of heavy hitters on this episode, okay? Moving on, Balin The Haymakers. Speaking of a heavy hitter, one that throws haymakers itself. 4/3 Rabbit Warrior for 3 mana in Naya. Tap 2 and tap tokens you control. Add 1 mana of any color. Tap 3 and tap tokens you control. Draw a card. Tap 4 and tap tokens you control. Put 3 counters on Balin to gain triple top turn. That last one is nice. Kind of not all that necessary. When it comes to commanders, things that are powerful in commander typically are like, oh, okay, ramp and card draw. This does both for you. This literally just like, hey, you know what? Just do everything for me. And also, sure, you can be a win condition too. Why not? So with this, essentially, you just go super wide, which is super easy to do. And again, because Balin has the abilities, it's not like tokens you control can tap for half a mana. It wouldn't work that way, but you know what I mean? Because it's like Urza in that way, where it has the abilities, you can tap those tokens right away, even if they're creature tokens. The summoning sickness does not matter. And also keep in mind, it again is any tokens, not just creature tokens. So every single kind of token you could ever make. Cool, blood tokens. I don't know why that came to mind first, but it did. Clue tokens, treasure tokens, etc., etc., etc. You can tap all those for mana. You can tap all those to draw cards. You've got plenty of untap effects in these colors as well, like mass untap effects, like Vitalize. Very simple, very effective. 1 mana, untap all your creatures. Cool. All your creature tokens, then tap again. You can have some absurd chainy turns where you're just like, okay, yeah, like a chain from this to that, to that, to that, to that. Once you get going, you can just win the game because you're like, okay, I cast that. Oh, and then I cast Shamanic Revelation, draw 20 cards because I have 20 creature tokens in play. Draw another giant untap effect, untap my team again, tap for more mana, tap to draw more cards. Yeah, you can really get things going and it can be really absurd. Now, here's the thing, and we will get to at least one commander here in a little bit that will demonstrate. This is an incredibly powerful commander. This is towards the top of the list. In my opinion, though, it is up there with Gev. It is an A tier commander. It is not quite to the S tier because, well, we've got one coming up shortly that will kind of demonstrate what exactly that means. Moving on, Elod, Corvicdoll, a 3/3 elf warrior for 3 mana in green. You may look at the top card of your library anytime. Cast creature spells to the top of your library. Pay a single green mana. Tap 2 and tap 2 creatures you control. Reveal a card from your hand or the top of your library. Reveal a creature card this way. Put on the battlefield. Actively during your turn. You know what's really absurd is that, like, if we saw this commander, say, 4, 5, 6 years ago, maybe 7 years ago, okay, maybe like 10 years ago, okay. If we saw it years ago, okay, this would be like, my gosh, how did they print such a thing? Oh, this is game ending. Oh my god. It is a very good commander. It is a very, very, very good commander. It is solid. It is incredibly solid. Is it up to the A tier in this list? No, it is not. No, it is not at all. It is a very good commander that's like, hey, you want to just get a bunch of miscellaneous again? It doesn't say non-token creatures. Tap 2 untap creatures you control. It does not say that. Do you just want to, like, cheat giant creatures off the top of your library very easily into play or out of your hand? Cool. Awesome. It's solid. It's a very solid commander. Is it toward the top? No. And yes, it is kind of a thing where, like, I guess we have talked about, what, like 2 commanders so far that are monocolor. That does obviously influence where it ends up a little bit. If this had access to more colors, it'd probably be up a little bit higher. Elod, Corvicdoll, though, is probably, only during your turn is a limitation. Oh, it's like a B minus, C plus. We're going to throw you in the C tier for now, though. I am so sorry, Elod. Don't hate me. I mean, like, literally, like, here's where we're at right now in Magic, where things are so powerful that's like, oh yeah, this thing can just, like, cheat giant Eldrazi off the top of your library into play, and it's like, oh, okay, maybe a C-tier commander. Moving on! Garen Mirror of the Wilds. A 3/3 human shaman for 3 mana in Naya. Haste, non-token creature you control have. Tap create tokens, copy a target token you control, enter the battlefield this turn. They really didn't limit this one at all. Like, they did not limit this one at all. This was like, hey, you know what? This could combo in that way, or that way, or that way, or that way, or that way. Maybe we should limit just a little bit. No, we won't be doing that at all. What's the card? Village Bellringer, like with this one, basically. Like, oh yeah, if you just get Village Bellringer out, you create a token copy of it, and all of a sudden you're like, okay, cool, infinite untaps. There you go. There's plenty of ways to do that. You're in the right color combination, kind of, for what you want to do with this. White has creatures with, like, enter the battlefield untap effects. I guess green does as well. And red has those make token copies of creatures temporarily. Those, like heat shimmer type cards, essentially. So there you go. You got that, and you just make infinite copies of things, and you just win from there. And of course, the commander itself can do that too. Again, it has haste, and it can tap for that ability too. And giving it to all of your non-token creatures is pretty absurd. And on top of that, like, even if you're not at the combo stage of it, it's like, oh, I made a treasure. Okay, I can tap all my non-token creatures to make as many treasures as I have, essentially, creatures in play. It is one that can go in a lot of different directions, and of course can be combo-y, it can be just powerful in general. It's not really limited at all. A tier commander, still not quite up to that S tier in my opinion. Campal, Profiteering Mare. A 2/4 Human Advisor for 3 mana in Orzhov. Whenever one of our tokens end a battlefield under your opponent's control, for each of them, create a tap token's copy of it. Triggers only once each turn. One of our tokens end a battlefield under your control, each opponent loses 1 life, and you gain 1 life. It is a solid commander. It is one that is pretty dependent on your opponents, actually, though. Like, if you think about it, it is pretty dependent. There are certain ways to, like, okay, like, I have cards that make tokens for my opponents. There's only so many of those out there. There are certain cards that do that. Obviously, there's only so many of those out there. It only triggers once each turn with that anyways. But that being said, it is dependent on your opponents to, like, really have, like, some explosives going on with this. It really does. That being said, yeah, just at the very end of the day, just being like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm in play and I drain my opponent's whatever tokens come into play. There are, of course, better commanders out there that do that. Overall, like, this is one where it's like, okay, it's like C, it's probably, yeah, it's probably a D commander. It's probably a D level commander. Again, like, if you just look at it compared to, like, Elod here that's put in the C, which again was like a B minus, C plus probably for me. This is definitely below that. This is a D level commander in comparison. That is pretty dependent upon your opponents for the most part when it comes to, like, actually doing what it wants to do. Next up, Naresa, Dealer of Death. 3/4 Human Rogue for 3 mana in Grixis. Whenever you commit a crime, you may pay 1. If you do, look at the top 2 cards of your library, put one of them in your hand, the other in your graveyard. Now, here's the thing, and I'm glad Wizards actually did this with at least one, and I know that it's probably too easy to combo with, you know, like, oh yeah, committing a crime and limiting it. This is one of the very few cards that isn't limited with committing a crime, which is nice. It's not like once each turn. No, it's like, okay, you can do this as many times as you want. So yes, there are ways to, like, okay, cool. Yeah, something hits my graveyard, I get this effect, or I get a card in my hand, I draw a card, whatever, I get this effect, and all of a sudden I can commit as many crimes as I want, essentially. So there you go. In Magic, you're just committing crimes. That's what happens, right? That being said, you do have to pay mana to do so. Now, there are, like, weird, like, setup combos that you can do with that, too. Does take some setup. This one, I would say, like, it's a cool commander. I don't think it's really all that powerful at the end of the day. Like, there is some good card advantage to be had with it, absolutely. But again, where we're at right now with commanders, like with the most powerful commanders from the year, things are really quite pushed. I'd say this one's like a C plus, C minus. I'm so sorry, Marchesa, but yeah, you're a D tier commander. I'm so sorry. Next up, Kyo of Many Paths, a really cool commander. 3/3 Human Wizard for 3 mana in Teamer. All the 3s. Whenever you cast a modal spell, there, I guess that's why they did it, right? Modal spell, choose up to X, where X the number of times you chose a mode for that spell, which there are 3 things. There we go, 3. Exile the top card of your library until the end of your next turn. You may play it. Put a counter on Riku against your top turn. Create a 1/1 bluebird creature token with flying. So basically, like, take all the modal spells and just chuck them in a deck and get a bunch of different value, you know, a bunch of extra value essentially with that. That's great. It's a really cool commander. It's very value-centric. You are, I'm not going to say limited, right? Like, but if you really want to get the most out of this commander, you're probably utilizing, like, ones that really have, again, 3 modes, essentially, to them. You get, like, a lot of different modes, essentially. So, yeah, you are kind of limited as to what goes in this. Like, if it was 5 color, that would help out quite a bit when it comes to that. It is giving you a lot of value, but, like, when it comes to, like, the value that you're getting, it's, like, the 2 things that really matter are, like, the Impulse Draw. Cool, that's nice. Impulse Draw is great. And again, play it is better than cast it because you can get the lands into play. That is impactful. That being said, like, the counter on it, like, okay, I get counters on it and it gets trampled. Whoop-de-doo. Yeah, going wide, making birds, that's nice. Obviously, you can take advantage of that with some anthems, etc., etc. This one takes a good amount of setup. And again, you are pretty limited on what you actually are playing to really get the most out of it because you have to have those modal spells that give you a lot of different value from them. So yes, you do need a lot of modal effects in there. Again, that is good because, like, a lot of them are pretty toolboxy. Yeah, this one, I do think it's probably along the same lines. Essentially, it's, like, not quite up to, maybe it's like, maybe I underrated Elod is maybe the thing. Maybe I need to move Elod up, and that means other ones can get up. Maybe I'll do that. Maybe Elod does deserve to be in the B tier. Do I put Riku into the C tier, though? I don't know. Maybe. It is a good amount of value. It's a good amount of extra value, but again, like your build has to be, again, pretty along the lines of what it needs to be. Like, you don't have a lot of room for distinction with your build with this one. That does limit it quite a bit. There are very powerful multi spells out there. I'm going to keep it in the D tier for now, okay? I'm going to keep it in the D tier for now. Moving on. Stella Lee wildcard. All right, I'm going to spoil it right here. This is the one that always comes to mind when it's like comparing anything else to like this S tier commander. It's just like, are they up to Stella? Probably not. There might be another one on this list, but not many at all, because Stella is just kind of a league above many things. And when I saw it printed, I was like, you gotta be kidding me. 2/4 Human Rogue for 3 mana, and is it? When you cast your second spell each turn, exile the top card of your library until the end of your next turn, you may play a card. This card did not need that. This card literally could not have that, and it would still be an S tier commander. It does not need that. That's just an extra nice little thing for it. Tap. Copy target insert short spell you control. You may choose targets for the copy. Activate only if you cast 3 more spells this turn. That is not really a limitation. Like, that is not a limitation at all for this. That is super simple. And all of a sudden, this is just, oh, hey, not really a limitation at all. And all of a sudden, I'm just tap, copy, spell, I win the game. This is literally just like, okay, does it say untap on it? Cool. I have infinite copied spells, essentially. And if they have, like, say, like Cerulean Wisps, draw a card. Okay, like, untap a creature. Cool. All right, I cast 2 spells. I cast that. I copy it as many times as I want to. I draw my entire library, essentially, and I win from there. If I have Dramatic Reversal, okay, cool. I've got infinite mana, infinite other things as well. There's other ways to go infinite as well. There's a lot of ways to go infinite with this. Super easy, super effective. Get a bunch of low-to-ground spells, get a bunch of, like, cantrippy spells, and then just get those untap, I win effects, essentially. That's all you need to do, and you win the game. It's super simple. It's super effective. It's way too easy. It is way too easy, Wizards. And again, it literally has like, oh, okay, cool. Like, oh, I don't have what I need. Well, I cast my second spell this turn. Oh, I just happened to impulse draw off the top and I got it. Because Stella, for whatever reason, has that. So again, like literally, there are no breaks on this train, right? There are no limitations to this. It's not activate once each turn. It's not activate only during your turn even. It is literally just like, oh yeah, here's the limitation. 3 or more spells. Oh, okay, that's not hard at all for a deck that like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I literally just want to cast a couple spells and then all of a sudden I dramatic reversal win very, very, very easily. My goodness, Wizards. Again, like sometimes I complain when they limit things too far. Again, like my least favorite words are the ones I just said, like activate only sorcery speed, triggers only once each turn or whatever. I hate those words on most cards out there. Sully could have used a little bit. Like at least you could have been like, okay, at the pay 1 to tap to do so, okay? That would have been at least some kind of a limitation, some kind of a limiting factor. No limitation at all. Very low to the ground commander that is absurdly broken. Yeah, it's an S tier commander. Moving on, the infamous Cruel Claw. Very funny and could be broken like in the right scenario, I guess, if you go right away with it. But here we go. A 3/3 Weasel Mercenary with Menace for 3 mana and Rakdos. Deals combination player, exile cards to the top of your library until you exile a non-land card. Cast the card by discarding a card rather than paying its mana cost. This is one where you could like World Fire, right? You can just, all right. I have nothing else in the deck, just World Fire, and I'm literally just hoping to essentially hit with my commander early, and then World Fire, and then maybe I can recast my commander and hit my opponents before they take me out. Again, World Fire is like everyone loses everything, hands, graveyards, everything in play, and everyone goes down to 1 life. That is kind of what you could do with this one, obviously, if you literally just built the deck with just this and World Fire. Sure, is that the most powerful build around it? Probably not, because, yeah, you probably need to do a little bit more than that, just a little bit more than that to actually make it work. It's still like, okay, I had a lot of free value. And of course, like once you get things going, yeah, that can be really powerful. You probably want to include like as many extra combat spells as you can, some copying effects as well, some double strike effects as well, of course. And of course, you do have some tutors that can really like, put things on top, obviously, too. You got to get things going to really make this work, though. You do got to get this going. Overall, again, like you do have like the random chance of just hitting the exact thing that you need off the top to win. Got some wonky builds around it. Probably going to go with a B tier commander overall. Yeah, probably. Okay, you know what? I'm moving Riku up to the C tier because that's been on my mind like this entire time since I had the conversation. Okay, here we go. Next up, the Jolly Balloon Man. I hate to applaud Wizards for actually limiting this one, but thank you for limiting this one when you didn't with Stellalily. A 1 for a human clown with haste for 3 mana in Boros. Pay 1, tap, create tokens, copy on a target creature you control, except a 1/1 red balloon creature to addition to other colors and types. Has flying and haste, sacrifice begin next end, step, active on sorcery. Wizards literally just was like, okay, Geared wasn't enough, let's make the Jolly Balloon Man, which is kind of similar, but not the same thing. Again, Geared, basically, limitation is only creating token copies of tokens. This one's limitation is you have to actually pay a mana to do so. You have to pay a mana to actually copy any other creature you control. So yeah, again, like Village Bellringer, sure, if you've got any kind of Mandorks in play, you got infinite mana, you win the game, all right? You have infinite attacks, whatever that too. Infinite balloon flying attacks, cool, good for you. Yeah, so this one is one that, again, like, isn't that hard to break, like isn't hard to break really at all. It's also just even at a base level, like really good value. You have any kind of a creature that has a solid ETB or LTB and you're like, okay, I pay 1 mana tap, make a copy of it all of a sudden, and yeah, I get that ETB. That's just nice. All right, I get whatever ETB. I was gonna think of like one of the Gear Hulks or whatever essentially, but yeah, you've got a lot of value to be had with this. I guess Cataclysmic wouldn't be all that good for you. That being said, Sun Titan, there you go. That being said, again, I'd say it's not quite up to the level of like Geared, Balin, and Gev. Like it is very, 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 very good. I just don't think it's quite there. It's probably like a B plus commander. Like it's on the upper level of that B tier though. Okay, so it's gonna be a B plus commander. Moving on, Tyvar the Pummeler. Tyvar's got a bat. 3/3 Elf Warrior for 3 mana in green. Tap another untapped creature you control. Against indestructible turn, tap it. Pay 5 mana in total. Creature control +X/+X to turn execute power among creatures you control. This is a very interesting, very solid commander. It is one that is hard to deal with. Again, like literally you can tap any other creature you control to protect it. That is solid. This is kind of like, I mean, like, you know, the Elf Ball-ish, but like adjacent. Okay, like we already have seen this commander, but in Elves, but this is just slightly different. You can't regenerate any elf you control. This is like any creatures, but it just protects the commander itself. And it doesn't give trample, which is huge. It does give potentially more power, obviously, in like stacking power, because again, you activate it once, it doubles the power. You activate it twice, that's basically quadrupling the power, essentially, right? So all of a sudden, you are exponentially growing if you're putting a bunch of mana into this. And of course, if you are tapping creatures, kind of like we talked about, like Bristly Bill, like there are certain creatures that like tap based on their power. So all of a sudden, they just tap for an absurd amount of mana. If you have some untap effects, things can get absolutely crazy with that too. It doesn't grant trample, which is probably a good thing, because if it did, that'd be a much easier win for it. It's a very, very solid commander. Does require some setup to get there. I'm going to say this one is probably also probably a solid B. Probably a solid B tier commander. Moving on, Vraska the Silencer, a 3/3 Gorgon Assassin with Death Touch. For 3 mana in Golgari. Whenever another creature an opponent controls dies, you may pay 1. If you do, return the card, battlefield, tap to your control. It's a treasure artifact with tap. Sacrifice the artifact, add 1 mana color, lose all other card types. So, this is an interesting card where... it is an interesting card where, again, it's very dependent on what your opponents have. If your opponents have some very solid non-token creatures that you can turn into treasures for you, that you get, you know, whatever ETBs they might have or LTBs they might have, that can be great. I mean, at the very least, right, you are getting value out of it by kind of like storing mana. Even if the creature says just like a vanilla creature that does nothing, just paying 1 to be like, okay, your creature died, I got a treasure. That's still nice to be able to invest that mana that you weren't going to use anyways, maybe, and just turn it into treasures for creatures. Of course, if you have like specific ways to take out creatures, right, that you're like, oh, that opponent has got this amazing creature and I get a token copy of it, basically, that's just a treasure, but I still get, you know, whatever effects it might have. Cool. That's great. Again, this one is dependent upon your opponents, though, and because it being dependent upon your opponents, I think it's got more potential than like Campal, which is dependent upon like tokens specifically for your opponents. This is dependent upon non-token creatures, which I'd say like more people have. I'd say this one is a very solid, probably like C plus commander. Like it is solid. It's probably one that I thought was. I thought it was probably more powerful when it came out initially, but like, yeah, we've got a lot of powerful creatures this year, a lot of commanders this year. I think it's probably a pop. Yeah, C plus commander. Okay, moving on. Zenia Valley's Voice, a 1/3 Bird Bard, which is a thing, apparently, for flying for 3 mana in Jeskai, plus X+0, X a number of other creatures you control base power 1, creature spells you cast have offspring 2. Basically, pay 2 extra mana, you get an extra copy of that creature. That is a 1/1, a token copy of it. So, again, like I mentioned earlier, kind of like with the Balloon Man, like, hey, cool, like, any ETBs on creatures, you're like, okay, great, I just pay 2 extra mana and I get massive ETB from creature. Also, by making a token copy of them, cool, I can use other effects like Populate to essentially make even more token copies of those. You can have a lot of powerful effects with that. This does require the right creatures in hand. There's not a ton of tutors for creatures in these colors. In fact, like the 2 colors that you'd want for like creature tutors are not present here, right? Essentially, doesn't mean there aren't powerful things that you can do with it. It is a solid commander. I don't think it's quite up to even the B tier, though. It is a good commander. I know there's a lot of players out there that really love Zenia, and it's a very good commander. I just think that it is probably more of a C tier commander. There's a lot of cool things you can do with it, but, like, does it stack up to, like, the Jolly Balloon Man? I don't think so. So, yeah, that's just me. Or Bristly Bill or any of those. Okay. Next up, Akul the Unrepentant. I do not repent. A 5/5 Scorpion Dragon Rogue, because that's the thing with flying and trample, for 4 mana in Ratto. Sacrifice 3 other creatures. You may put a creature card from your hand on the battlefield. Activate only as a sorcerer only once each turn. Again, those are the limitations, Wizards. You probably should have used some of that limitations with Stella, but you're like, nope, no brakes on that train. This one does have some breaks on it. Because of that, it does limit it in a way where it's not like the top tier commander, all right? It does. That being said, I mean, a 5/5 flying trample creature for 4 mana, that's already just nice right there. But of course, being able to be like, oh, I sacrifice these 3 creature fodder pieces, essentially, just like, oh, it made a bunch of tokens, whatever, a bunch of little goblins, who cares? All right, sacrifice those, cheat into play, giant Eldrazi out of my hand. Again, you can literally do this turn 4, you get this down. Yeah, okay, cool, I did it. You probably do it even earlier. Obviously, if you have like a Soul Ring type hand, you get, something else out. You get like, turn 2, all right, I get my fodder out. Turn 3, I get a cool out. And all of a sudden, I just cheat out to play this massive creature. Yeah, there's a lot of powerful plays with it. It is, again, a bit more limited, I would say, than those A-tier commanders when it comes to, like, its potential. Because, yeah, it is sorcery speed. It's only once each turn. Which, again, is like, why does it have to specify that, actually? Why does it specify only once each turn if it's sorcery speed? Because you can't do it on your opponent's turns anyways. So, the rules layer out there, please let me know in the comments below. Any judges out there? Because, like, it would just be like, only once on your turn. Because you can't do your opponent's turns anyways. I don't know. All right, anyways, I think overall, because of those limitations, this is a powerful commander that can have some really powerful plays. I'm going to throw it in the B tier. It's probably more middle of the road. Moving on. Amonatu Veil Piercer, 2/4 Human Wizard for 4 mana in Esper. Begin to upkeep Surveil 2. Each enchantment card in your hand has Miracle. Its Miracle cost is equal to its mana cost reduced by 4. For those of you that might not know this, because of Miracle, you can actually break timing restrictions. So, again, on your opponent's turn, if you draw a card that is an enchantment, your first card drawn on that turn, you can cast it. The Miracle cost, even if it does not flash, right? It basically gives it kind of like pseudo-flash in a way, plus that -4. So essentially, once you have things set up in a way where you can like hit enchantments each turn, essentially, off the top of your library, drawing with like repeat draw effects like a Merfolk Looter type thing, cool. You can just like, oh, okay, cool. I go around the table, and all of a sudden I played 4 enchantments with a reduced cost of 16 in total, some massive enchantments, some really powerful ones like Overwhelming Splendor, those kind of things as well, and all of a sudden I'm doing them like basically instant speed on my opponent's turns. So yeah. A lot of powerful things. This one does require a good amount of setup to really get things going. Like, once you get going, yeah, there's a lot of powerful, huge enchantments that can make massive moves. I would say that this one, though, it's just like, you know what? It's close, all right? It's close to being probably... it's kind of like a C+ kind of... It's like a C+ commander, in my opinion. It is powerful, but it's not quite to the tier of the B tier. And again, I think it's just because we're pretty top-heavy when it comes to, like... Stelly is on its own, in my opinion. The next 3... are currently on their own. We'll see that shortly. That will not be the actual, thing, but there's going to be another one that joins them, I should say. But yeah, it is hard to break into those tiers, and the B tier already has just a lot of solid, heavy hitters. All right, moving on. Hands Rag the Quake Mole. Again, I did say that we'd get there shortly. 8/4 Mole God, because that's a thing for 4 mana in Gruul. When it becomes locked, untap each creature you control after this combat phase. Initial combat phase, pay 7 mana in total in Gruul. Oh, must be blocked each combat this turn of Fable. This one just kind of upset me with the way that Wizards made it. It's like, wait, maybe this isn't obvious enough as to what we want players to do with it. Okay, let's put the combo on the card. Like, literally, just like, oh, okay, we put the combo on the card, and now, yeah, you just have to block it again. And if you give it indestructible, very simple, very effective, of course. Not infinite combats. You need an opponent's creature to also be able to survive, like, indestructibility, essentially, to be able to survive combat again and again and again. That would be infinite combats, essentially. So, again, if your opponents have indestructible creatures, or if you can give an opponent indestructible creature, or make one of the creatures indestructible, there you go. Infinite combats, infinite. And again, it's like untap each creature control. It doesn't specify each creature that attacked. So you can untap your mana dorks as well, have infinite mana. But yeah, they basically printed the combo on the card, which I find to be a bit ridiculous, Wizards. It's a bit too, like, just hand-holdy, and that's like, yeah, we know you want to lure. You want to lure with this commander. There's already lure effects in these colors, okay? That aside, just evaluating its power level, it's not quite Stellar Elite. Like, Stellar Elite is still on its own tier, in my opinion. Anzrag is incredibly powerful, though. It's going to be an A-tier commander for me. Like, it is a very powerful commander. Again, the combo is written on the card. Very simple, very effective. Yeah, you win the game. Congratulations, you did the thing. At the very least, it's like, oh, I gave it indestructible, and it has to be blocked every single combat. I take out all your armies. I literally just, like, take out all your creatures, and also my other creatures are getting through while this is continuously taking out creatures. So I can probably take out 2 opponents while I'm doing this, too. Maybe even take out all 3 opponents. Even if I'm not going infinite, if I'm going like pseudo-infinite, I probably can take you out. Especially if I have trample with this commander as well. Yeah, it is a card that is very powerful. Next up, Kath Kith, whatever that name is, Famed Mechanist. 3/3 Dwarf Artificer for 4 mana in Jeskai. Fabricate 1. Other non-token creatures you control have Fabricate 1. Pay 2, tap, choose 1, populate or proliferate. We have gotten quite a few of these. Again, like over the past couple years, again, where literally it's like, oh, hey, what I mentioned earlier with Gev. Yeah, if you can get counters on a creature when it comes into play, you can do some broken things with persist creatures. Now, again, you are not in black, which is the most prevalent color when it comes to persist creatures. That being said, you do have a good amount of options as well, including some very powerful ones, especially when it comes to some of the blue ones and what you can do, like River Kelpie, drawing a bunch of cards. Yeah, I mean, basically an entire deck. And also, what, Glenelendra Archmage, is that the one where you pay blue basically to lock your opponents out of non-creature spells as long as you got mana for them? But yes, basically, again, like the, Impact Tremors, Infinite Persist, Sacrifice, I win the game. You don't have access to all the things that, again, Gev has. It's also not as low to the ground as Gev is either. There's also other avenues to victory with this, too, other directions you can go. That being said, yeah, the most powerful version of this is probably just, hey, yeah, Persist Creature, I win. You also don't have access to the tutors that Gev has as well. So because of all that, again, it has potential. I'm going to say this is a B tier commander. Very solid. Again, there's a lot of powerful commanders this year, and we're going to see some more of them. Next up, Korum The Undertaker, a commander that is near and dear to my heart because it's kind of similar-ish to Mr. Orfeo, which is near and dear to my heart. At least the build around it would be. 0/5 Human Warrior for 4 mana in Jund. Plus X+0, XC Grace, power among creatures in all graveyards. Tax everyone mills a card. During each of your turns, you may play a land or cast a spell from among cards in graveyards that are put there from libraries this turn. So basically, hey, yeah, you mill people and, or, you know, take things out or whatever. Yeah, they discard things or whatever it is, or not from libraries, I should say, never mind. Specific there. Again, being able to just mill people, there you go, that's mostly a thing. Or actually, you can tutor things out of libraries as well, sometimes as well, so that they keep that in mind. That being said, you can cast things. The more impactful thing, though, is literally this, okay, probably just entomb something out of your own library that has a massive amount of power, like Lord of Extinction, essentially, kind of things as well. And all of a sudden, this has absurd amounts of power, and you can just one-shot KO anyone. And also, you could fling it too. All right? Like, is this the most powerful thing in the world? No. Is it, like, at a base level pretty solid? Because, again, you are in black, which does have, again, those entomb type tutors where you can go get the exact creature you need. Again, like, Lord of Extinction. Okay, I literally just have a commander that is a one-shot KO now. Or I could fling it and probably take someone out as well. It doesn't take all that much setup to get there. I'm going to say this is a very solid C tier commander overall. You also have double strike effects too, so do keep that in mind. And of course, trample effects as well. Okay, Elod, the Shoreless Sea, a star elemental fish for 4 mana in blue. Power toughs each equal number of islands you control, attacks, enters or attacks at a flood counter target land. It's not island to other colors and types. For as long as it has flood counter on it. Sorry, other types, not colors. The first in-source spell you cast each turn costs blue or 1 less cast for each land you control a flood counter on it. That's the thing right there, okay? Literally just like one of the only cards out there that literally like reduces pips, but for instant sorceries, which is pretty crazy. So, by doing that again, you just have like once you just even get to like, say, 3-4 flood counters, which doesn't take long at all of a sudden, especially since it's enter or attack, you can like blink this and get that effect, right? Get those flood counters on your lands, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I have reduced cost to my instance by 3 blue, 4 blue, whatever it is. And all of a sudden, I am literally just casting instant speed things for free on my opponent's turns. Like 1 per turn free spell is very powerful. It does take setup to get there. I will say. This does take some time to build it up. Once you get going, very cool, very powerful, casting free things on each player's turn. You're limited to mono blue as well. I'm going to say overall, you're like a C+ commander. You're very solid, but not quite there. Again, we've got a lot of heavy hitters, as I've said before. Eric the Beguiler, a 4/4 human warlock lifelink for 4 mana in Esper. Whenever an aura you control becomes attached to a non-land permanent, opponent controls with mana value less than or equal to the aura's mana value. Gain control of that permanent for as long as that aura is attached to it. Oh, okay. Like this one, yeah, this is a commander where you are kind of dependent upon, again, your opponent's playing good things. But yeah, as long as you've got auras that can actually, you know, attach to them, there you go. You can steal their things. Now, most auras that attach things are creature auras. You do also have to have auras that have a good amount of CMC to actually, you know, steal their best things. So there is that. Overall, it's a solid commander. It's to me, it's one that's probably a bit more annoying than it is powerful in a way, I would say. Like, it's not overpowered. It's just more like, ow, you stole my best thing. That being said, again, it is dependent on, again, the aura being attached to it still. Like, it's not like a permanent steal effect. It is one that's dependent on the aura. So essentially, if those creatures are ever, the creatures or, you know, permanents are ever blinked, or, you know, a mass enchantment removal spell happens like an austere command, then obviously that really resets like all the value that you had essentially. And yeah, you can really kind of get blown out quite quickly. Yeah, I'd say overall this one is probably it's probably like a C- D+, but I'm gonna go with a D+ commander. All right, I'm gonna go with a D+ commander. I know there's some powerful builds around it, but like this is a pretty stacked class when it comes to a lot of things out there. Okay, here we go. Gain Corrupted Memory, a 2/2 illusion for 4 mana in Simic. As long as its power is even, you may cast non-creature spells that add flash. Power is odd, you may cast creature spells that add flash. Whenever you draw a card, you get a counter on it. So this is like kind of like a Vidalcan Orrery on a commander in a way, essentially, based off of the power. So you do need some ways to kind of manipulate that, but of course it gives you a way to do that by drawing cards. You can have some instant speed draw effects to like manipulate that, so you can cast what you need to cast, essentially. It's not really giving you any other real, I guess the avenue to victory is like, this gets an absurd amount of power and you swing. You still need ways to get through, ways to give a trample or whatever. Cool. That being said, yeah, being able to Vidalcan Orrery is pretty powerful. Where does it stand up compared to all these other commanders? I'd say that that's like probably, probably a C-tier commander. There's a lot of commanders that do a lot of things. Okay, moving on. Don't hurt me. All you can fans out there. All right, here we go. Mascar Girl, known killer, a 4/4 human assassin, Menace for 4 mana in black. Not a very good assassin if everyone knows who it is, I guess. Creatures control of Wither, which again is kind of weird that they brought back, but fun. They deal damage in the form of -1/-1 counters, and whenever a creature opponent controls dies, if its toughness was less than 1, draw a card. I mean, Wither is nice to kind of like force that issue-ish, but like more often, you're probably gonna be like, oh, I've got like Toxic Deluge type of effects that I'm just like, oh yeah, creatures get -X from this reason or that reason or whatever, essentially. -4/-4 cards as well, whatever it is. You've got ways to shrink creatures down so they've got less toughness than 1. You're going to draw a bunch of cards with it. Yeah, that's nice. That's very nice. I think overall that probably gets you to, very sorry about this, but C-tier commander. Okay, I'm very sorry. Very sorry, Mascar Girl. All right, okay. You're really cool. You're a very cool commander, but I think overall, like, yeah, you can draw a bunch of cards with it. You need kind of other avenues to really get things going. And, like, you also probably, unless you can, like, pump this commander a ton, are going to be taking out your own commander quite a bit throughout the game while you are trying to wipe out the board, essentially, and take out a bunch of things. Okay, next up. Ms. Bumbleflower, a 1/5 Rabid Citizen with Vigilance for 4 mana. In Bant, whenever you cast a spell, target opponent draws a card, put a counter target creature, it gains flying till end of turn. If this is the second time this ability resolved this turn, you draw 2 cards. Okay, here's the thing. Like, this one is, like, your goal with this commander is, if you're going to build it in a most powerful way, right, is never to just be like, group hug, just straight up group hug. No, that's not how you're going to win with it. You're going to win with it by comboing off and casting something an infinite number of times. Or, you know, the rules lawyers out there, not infinite, but however long it takes for your opponents to draw out. Because, again, it's not a May draw for them. You are forcing that draw. So basically, you're just casting spells, you're forcing draws, You are getting whatever miscellaneous 2-card combination or 3-card combination to cast things infinitely. It takes a good amount of build-up to do so. And while you are doing that, you are actively helping your opponents. Like, you are, if your commander is in play, which you probably won't play your commander until you're going to go off, probably is what it is, though. But, like, your commander is not helping you, essentially, unless you get your commander into play, want to help you dig down into your deck, and you can convince your opponents that you're not that Bumbleflower deck that, like, is going to just combo off and win, even though that's exactly what you're doing. So, yeah, it depends kind of on, like, your politicking skills, I guess, because, like, your commander's actively hurting you throughout the game until you actually win the game. So that's kind of where it is. So, and because of that awkward nature, Miss Bumbleflower, and yes, I know it's powerful. You have the entire deck built around just comboing. Yes, and you've got, creature tutors. You got tutors for certain spells as well that you can combo off with. Absolutely. I'd say overall, because the commander kind of does help you a little bit, but again, actively hurts you if you actually are going to utilize it. Yeah, I'm going to go with a D+ kind of commander. I am very sorry. I know Ms. Bumbleflower fans out there. There are a lot of them, and it's a very cool commander. I like the design a lot. As a Feldgriff fan, it's like kind of Feldgriff adjacent, but like, it's not the most powerful thing out there. Maybe it's a C tier commander at the most right now, okay? All right, Becca, Splitter of Seconds. So Becca is back and really cool. 2/5 Ogre Warlock with Menace for 4 mana in Grixis. Deals combination player. You get that many additional upkeep steps after this phase. I mean, it's a very cool commander. Literally, like, once it gets going, it is really, 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 really hard to stop. If you get the right upkeep trigger card in play, great. Because all of a sudden, you just get this through once, and you might just win from there. Getting an absurd amount of upkeep steps and getting, again, it's based off of the damage that this is doing. So if you can get this a good amount of power and get it through, yeah, you just like, oh, I get like 10 upkeeps. Cool. I get all these effects on my upkeeps. Cool. It does require a good amount of board commitment, though. It does require a good amount of setup. I'm going to say this one is probably a C tier commander. Miss Bumbleflower fans are going to kill me. I'll put you in the C tier. I can already hear you in the comments right now, and maybe that's affecting me. All right, moving on. Salala, Eager Trailblazer, a 4/5 Elf Scout for 4 mana in Zenia. Vigilance, whenever you cast a creature spell, create a 1/1 red mercenary creature token with tap. So creature control gets +1/+0 until up turn. Active on sorcery. Tap, choose a color. Add 1 mana of that color for each different power among creatures you control. This is a commander that goes infinite in ways that basically any other commander goes infinite with if it can just tap for a good amount of mana. Like if it's like, oh, okay, you play with Staff of Domination. Cool, I got there. I win. It's also like a go wide commander in a way. You're like, okay, yeah, I cast a good amount of creature spells. I go wide. Cool. This one does require some setup to get going. It requires, again, a good amount of board presence to, again, go infinite in a way as well. It requires a good amount of commitment. I mean, it's not the worst of the worst. It's not the best of the best. I think overall, Salala, you are probably a C tier commander. It's kind of crazy that literally, like, we're this far into this episode. We have this many commanders we already talked about. And all these are, 4 mana or less. That's just, like, how many solid commanders they made this year. They're like, oh, yeah, low to the ground-ish. Like, this, once you get, like, 1, 2, 3 is probably low to the ground commander. 4, 5 is probably middle tier commander when it comes to, like, the actual mana value. And then, like, 6+ is probably, like, expensive commander. And you better be pretty spicy if you're up there. That being said, here we go. The Necrobloom, a 2/7 plant for 4 mana. Landfall, whenever a land is battlefield under your control. Create a 0/1 green plant creature token. If you control 7 more lands, different names, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token instead. Land cards in your graveyard have dredge 2. So, of course, there is like the Get Rog combo that works with this because basically all of your lands are that one land that is escaping me right now. I'm going to get comments right now. Please let me know what that land's called in the comments below. The one that has dredge 2 just inherently. But yeah, basically the like Get Rog combo with that. We're like, okay, cool. I draw the cards. Cool. Good for me. That being said, at a base level, just like landfall, make creatures. That's just powerful in and of itself. Yeah, of course, you can do like aristocrat style synergies with this. You can do zombie style synergies with this as well, because obviously it doesn't take long to get to 7 lands of different names. In fact, even if you're just doing like, okay, I go and tutor for basics with like rampant growth type effects, snow-covered basics are a thing too, right? Obviously, so you can get to 6 of the 7 just by tutoring for basic lands, essentially. So, yeah, you can get there quite quickly. Yeah, making a bunch of zombies, but landfall, that can be quite powerful. Again, like, does it quite get to the B tier? These C tier are starting to fill up right now. I think this is more of a C tier commander. Yeah, maybe like a C+, but it is quite good, but not quite there. All right. Vanifar, Evolved Enigma, 3/4 Elf Ooze Wizard. For 4 mana in Simic, if you have combat your turn, choose 1, cloak a card from your hand, put a counter on each colorless creature you control. So here's the thing with like that, is that yeah, you can cloak things, anything, literally anything again, anything from your hand. It does not have to be a creature. It can be any card, including like Omniscience. You literally can just like cloak Omniscience from your hand, and then you can't actually pay to like flip it over. That being said, you can just blink it, which you've got plenty of blink effects in blue. So all of a sudden, you're just like, oh, okay, cool. I cheat and play like my most massive thing. You just go get like, oh, Eldrazi / giant things / Omniscience deck, whatever. And all of a sudden, you're like, okay, cool. I cheat that into play and I blink it. Okay. Like, the game can be over so quickly with this, your opponent's heads will spin. I think because of that, like, because literally you're just like, okay, I get all the best, like, really high value cards, and I just chuck in a bunch of, like, blink effects and some ramp as well, and, like, literally, like, turn 3, I cloak a card from my hand. Maybe even on that same turn, I can blink it. If not, maybe turn 4, I do that, and all of a sudden, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I just blinked Omniscience, I win. And, of course, you don't have, I mean, I don't think there's that many ways, really, in these colors to actually tutor for, like, say, Omniscience, like an enchantment, but still, you can tutor for an absurd amount of broken creatures in green, so there you go. So yeah, I'd say overall, Vannifar, you're probably a B tier commander, which is like how absurd you can go really quickly with the right hand and with the right combination of things. Okay, Ren the Relentless, a 3/4 rat rogue with ward 2 for 4 mana into Mir. The creature opponent controls would die, exile instead, so already graveyard hate right there for your opponents. That being said, at the beginning of each end step, create X 1/1 and black rat creature tokens. This creature gets +1/+1 for each other rat you control, or X the number of creatures opponents control that were exiled this turn. Basically a way to make a ton of creature tokens depending on your opponent's creatures dying. Yeah, so like board wipe stuff can go great with this, obviously. One-sided more so, or like, obviously like edict effects can be great because you're building up your army. You're taking out your opponent's armies, so do keep that in mind. Overall, yeah, I'm going to say that this one is probably a... Oh, where are you at? Where are you at? Oh, where do they see? Tier Commander. Moving on. Winter Misanthropic Guide. A 3/4 human warlock with ward 2 for 4 mana in Jund. Hitting for upkeep, each player draws 2 cards. As long as there are 4 more card types among cards in your graveyard, opponent's maximum hand size equal to 7 minus the number of cards of those types. This one is really, really, really gross, really, really disgusting. Like, once it gets things going, yeah, I mean, ward 2, that's nice, like, little protection for it. If you upkeep, each player draws 2 cards. You are helping your opponents technically, right, with that. Obviously, you're helping yourself as well, but yeah, you're gaining 2 cards. Your opponent's, 6 cards in total between the 3 of them. But yeah, having 4 more card types among cards in your graveyard, each one's maximum hand size equal to 7 minus the number of those card types. Once you get a lot of card types, your opponents can basically have like no hand size, and you can kind of lock your opponents out of the game. So again, this is kind of like Bumbleflower-esque, where like earlier on, potentially, this could help out your opponents, essentially, in some ways, but like making it so they are basically playing with no potential of saving cards, that can be just game ending. That's like Jin Gataxis, essentially, where it's like your opponents have no hand size. So it's like, or not no hand size, but they can't have a hand size. So making so they can't hold on to cards can really hamper strategies. But again, you are giving them, again, on your upkeep, 2 extra cards. So if you maybe have some ways to like mitigate those cards, force discard, that kind of stuff as well, you can do some pretty gross things. It does require some setup. We're going to go with a, probably a C tier Commander. Moving on. Yaris, Roar of the Old Gods. A 4/4 Centaur Druid for 4 mana in Gruul. Other creature control of haste. Whenever one of our face-down creature control deal combat each player, draw a card. When a face-down creature control dies, turn to the battlefield face-down under its control. If it's a permanent card, then turn it face-up. I mean, yeah, face-down tribal fun times is fun. Like, again, like, face-down creature is cool. They deal combat, awesome, draw a card. Great, good for me. Face-down creature dies, flips it over. Cool, that's awesome. How many face-down things can you utilize in this? Like, yeah, we are getting more support for it, but again, you're like kind of on like a specific track, and you might end up having to use like some pretty like non-spectacular cards to like really make this work. You're not exactly in the right color combination to really take advantage of like face-down things. Like, again, we talked about like in Simic, you got blink effects. If you had white in there, you have blink effects as well. You don't really in this. So I think this one's a little more limited. I think this is probably a D tier commander overall. And again, when like creatures are face down, like if you want to get that card advantage, great. But like you're swinging with a bunch of most likely 2/2 like morph creatures. Like, okay, if I get them through, cool. But if I don't, like they're just getting taken out. All right. Zimone, Mystery Unraveler, 3/3 human wizard for 4 mana in Simic. Whenever a land you control enters Manifest Dread, if this is the first time this ability is resolved this turn. Otherwise, you may turn a permanent you control face up. Okay, so somewhat similar to, yeah, Vannifar in a way where it's like, okay, I can like cheat things very, very easily. You need to get them off top of your library, though. You might just get lucky, obviously, and again, like, hit Omniscience. And you're like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, because Manifest Dread again's like, one on the battlefield face down is a 2/2. And you can also, pay mana, flip it up as a creature, but again, you've got blink effects, and these colors should just do that for you. Or you just have literally, like, this commander's like landfall. You play like an Evolving Wilds, you crack it, you could literally just like, oh, I just happened to turn 3 in Omniscience, and I win. Or, obviously, like, any other, essentially, essentially kind of massive, heavy-hitting creature or heavy-hitting card that can really impact the game quite quickly. There are certain ways to manipulate the top of your library. There's ways to know what's on top, obviously, Future Sight type cards. But also, like, there are certain creature tutors that can go get you the right creature off the top of your library, essentially with this too. Yeah, like, it is a very solid commander. I think overall, it's not quite, I mean, maybe this is like Vannifar level, actually, though. It just depends. It just depends. It's like, landfall is like, okay, like, you can really use and abuse landfall quite a bit, again, on your opponent's turns as well. And yeah, you could get lucky to hit the right thing on top. There are ways to manipulate the top. Get things from your hand on top, like Brainstorm type effects too. So, okay, maybe I will throw this in the B tier as a B tier commander. That and Vannifar are kind of similar. Okay, moving on. Alania the Divergent Storm, a 3/5 Otter Wizard for 5 mana in Izzet. Whenever you cast a spell, if it's the first instant spell, or the first instant spell, the first horror spell, or the first Otter spell, I always forget about that. Yeah, Otter Tribal, not really the most powerful build of this. Other than Alania, you've cast this turn, you may have target opponent draw a card. If you do, copy that spell to the copy. I always forget that's like making an opponent draw a card too. Like, that doesn't matter at all, really. Like, that doesn't matter at all. Like, that would usually just be a downside, but for this commander, it's like, no, that really doesn't matter because I'm casting extra turn spells. So I just cast an extra turn spell, I get an extra turn. Opponent, yeah, like literally you getting extra cards probably does not matter at all. I'm just taking all the extra turns. It's again one of those commanders where you just like, once you get things going, once you get the first extra turn spell that is doubled, you just win. You just win because the next time you do it, you're going to do it again. You probably have other doubling effects too. You're just taking all the extra turns and you win. It's a very powerful commander. One that I think, again, people might kind of underrate just because of like, kind of like with Gav, where it's like, it mentions lizards. And it's like, well, lizard tribal isn't powerful. Ignore that part. This mentions otters. Ignore that part. Just literally like, this commander just doubles up a spell for free. It just doubles up an instant or sorcery. If you have extra turns, you just win. You just win. You've got ways to, play them. They get copied. Cool. You've got ways to get them back out of your graveyard for the ones that don't exile. You've got ways to essentially tutor for them as well. You're going to win the game once you cast that first extra turn spell. Your opponents can literally do nothing to stop it, essentially. Moving on. Aracan Sky Captain, a 4/4 Human Knight, flying lifelink. Ward, discard a card for 5 mana in Esper. Whenever a modified creature control attacks, double the number of each kind of counter on it. Then for each non-token permanent attached to it, create a token that's copy of that permanent attached to that creature. This is a very cool commander. It's a very solid commander. Again, like, literally just like with like +1 counters, okay? Just at a base level with counters. And again, you don't have access to green. You've got access to white though, which is very good with counters, obviously. Just doubling up counters, like kind of like a Colonian Hydra in that way, is cool. Now also, like, it's also very interesting with like, okay, like if I have auras attached to it, or if I've got, again, like if I got equipment attached to it, like I can double those things up too. That's really cool as well. But like at a base level, if it's just like, okay, double the number of counters on something, that's already pretty powerful. Again, like if you were in green, this would probably go up a little bit for me, but I think this one's probably, it's kind of like a C+, B-, probably. Oh, does it make the cut? Does it make the cut? I'm gonna go with a C tier commander. Sorry, Arna. Sorry, you're close. You're very close to that B tier, I think, but you're not quite there. Next up, Dusana the Rage Mother, a 5/5 bear for 5 mana in Naya. Enters the battlefield, draw a card for each creature control base power toughness 2/2. Whenever a creature control base power toughness 2/2 attacks, it gets +3/+3 until end of turn. The key here is it does say base power and toughness, so again, like you can modify those, you can give anthems, you can give counters on them. This does give you a good amount of card draw, of course, like again, like any kind of a blink effect. The main thing that limits this one though is like you are pretty limited to building your deck around like, okay, I basically just need like the best creatures that are inherently 2/2s. I need those creatures. If I don't have those creatures, I can't just be like, oh yeah, the best creature for the situation in this deck would just be this. Well, is its power 2/2? No. Well, then, like, you really can't build around that necessarily. You do have a lot of blink effects, obviously, in white. So, like, once you get things set up, you can get things going. I think overall, it's probably, and we're getting a bit packed here in this tier, but it's probably a C tier commander. Moving on. Gisa, the Hell Razor, 4/4 Human Warlock for 5 mana in black. Ward 2, pay 2 life, I should say. Skeleton, zombie control, +1/+1, and Menace. Whenever you can make crime, create 2, tap, 2/2 black zombie creature tokens. This ability triggers only once each turn. Kind of like I mentioned earlier with Marchesa. Yeah, trigger only once each turn. This could be a lot more powerful if it wasn't that. And sure, I understand why they probably limited this one because creatures on the battlefield, you probably have other things you can sacrifice them, maybe ping something, whatever. It's like, okay, you can commit crimes just by things coming to play. Sure. Okay, fine. That being said, like, zombies are very well, obviously, skeletons, not really all that well supported. Zombies are incredibly well supported. Is this the most powerful zombie commander of all time? No, it's just like basically like zombies with an anthem. Cool. And like sometimes I get to make more zombies. Cool. Maybe I'm underrating this, and I tend to do that. I apologize. I do tend to do that sometimes just with like strictly tribal commanders. Zombies do have a ton of support, so just at a base level, like it's gonna be really good when it comes to like the amount of support it has. It's only a mono black though versus like some of the other zombie commanders obviously have more than that. Maybe that's influencing this, but like I think it's probably not quite up to a B tier with this group, so I'm gonna go with a C tier commander. Moving on, Junith Card Sewer. Oh, here we go. A 3/4 human shaman for 5 mana in Rakdos. Whenever you cast an instant source spell, you're gonna choose the first one the vast majority of the time. Gains Death Touch and Lifelink. Or create a 2/2 random creature token with this creature dies, deals 2 damage each opponent. This is a commander that can get absolutely obnoxious because, yeah, I mean, the right build for it is just like I have 15 plus board wipes. Basically, I just have 15 plus like 1 mana board wipes that are one-sided. Right? I just have like, oh yeah, this little spell just deals 1 damage each opponent's creatures. Oh, okay, that's a one-sided board wipe because it gives that spell Death Touch. And also you just gained a ton of life with it. So like, yeah, 5 mana. Again, we're getting to like the, mid to high, mana values essentially for commanders. You got to be incredibly impactful to do that. This is an incredibly impactful commander. Is it top of the top, cream of the crop? Probably not. Like, it's not up to, Stella Elite standards. It is not. That being said, like, it's probably like, it is like an A-, B+, and I will err on the side of it being an A commander, okay? Like, this is one where it is super impactful. It is one that's like, yeah, you don't want to go up against this. And, again, once it starts locking down the board, you can't really commit to the board. You're like, oh, that player's got 6 cards in hand. One of them is probably a simple ping effect that hits all my creatures, and all my creatures are just gone again. So yeah, like this is just like continuously wipe the board, gain a ton of life. Yeah, it's hard to stop this once it gets going. Speaking of which, Maha, it's Feather's Knight. Gross. 6/5 elemental bird, flying trample for 5 mana in black. Word discard a card. Creature poets control at base toughness 1. Ouch. Just ouch. Just ouch. Like this is just like, okay, like doesn't matter how large your creatures are. It's kind of like we talked about earlier with Kudo, but different. It is like, oh, okay, your creatures are, yeah, now I'll just have 1 toughness. Literally anything takes them out. And of course, like, unlike Kudo, who has access to like Elish Norn, which is one of the only ways that Kudo has to just like lock down the board. There are some other ways too, but still. This one is just like, oh, I've got plenty of ways to like permanently give my opponent's creatures -1/-1. Maybe my creatures as well. I don't really care about that. Like, care back. Like, I've got ways to just like, oh yeah, all creatures get -1/-1. Okay, you can't play creatures. You literally cannot play creatures. I'm just locking down the board with my commander, and this one of many effects I have in the deck to do so. Even if I am not locking down the board right now, if you commit to the board with creatures, I play a simple like 1 mana spell that's like all creatures get -1/-1 until I turn, and all of a sudden I've wiped the board again of my opponent's creatures. It is just one-sided board wipe after one-sided board wipe, kind of like Judith. This is a really, really hard commander to stop once it gets going. Again, it locks down the board in a super, super brutal way. Okay, A tier commander. Next up, Marina Vendrell, 3/5 human warlock for Wooburg. Enters reveal the top 7 cards of your library. Put all enchantment cards among them in your hand. The rest of your library in random order. Tap, lock or unlock a door of target room you control, active as a sorcery. This is one where, again, like, some people are like, well, rooms don't have that much support, so it's not that good of a commander. You can kind of ignore that. Like, sure, you might want to include, like, some of the most powerful rooms, absolutely, but, like, you don't have to build around that last effect at all. This is just, like, Wooburg Enchantress commander. This is just literally like, okay, Wooburg with a commander that's an Enchantress that just gives me a good amount of card advantage. Because, again, like, off the top 7, I might hit, like, 3 enchantments, 4 enchantments. So if I have a deck built around, like, all enchantments, that's pretty good. On ETB, again, not requiring a cast trigger. I do have access to some blink effects, obviously, as well, including some enchantments that might blink too. So yeah, this is one where it's just like Wooburg Enchantress. That is literally what this is at a base level. That is pretty solid. Just like at a base level, that is a pretty solid commander. Again, 5 color, you got access to everything. Enchantress can be a very powerful synergy. Overall, like, it's probably like a B-, C+. What side is this going to err on? We're going to go with a C tier commander. Moving on. Nimizit Guildpact. A 6/6 dragon avatar for 5 mana in Wooburg, flying hexproof multicolored. Deals combination player, deals X damage to any target. Target player draws X cards, you gain X life for X the number of different colored pairs among permanents you control. It's exactly 2 colors. Yeah, I mean, this is doing a lot. Hexproof from multicolored is nice. It's not going to save it from some of the, like, best removal spells out there in Commander, obviously. Like, just Swords of Plowshares. Okay, it's gone. Deals combination player, you know, getting X damage. You have to, like, really, like, you have to super commit with this one to doing a bunch of different permanents of different colors. So you are committing, like, really, really hard to that to make it really work. You get a good amount of, again, like, value out of that. It is based on getting through and hitting a player, which it does have, you know, evasion right there with the flying. It is based on that, though. You, of course, can take advantage of, like, double strike type effects as well. Yeah, like, overall, at the end of the day, like, where does this fit compared to all the other ones? It's probably, like, a C- commander, in my opinion. So, C tier. Moving on. Roxanne, Starfall Savant, a 4/3 cat druid for 5 mana in Gruul. Enters the battlefield or attacks, create a tap cost artifact token named Meteorite. When it enters the battlefield, does 2 to any target, tap add 1 mana color. Whenever you tap an artifact token for mana, add 1 mana of any type that artifact produced. Basically, treasures. That's basically what this commander is. Like, hey, do you have treasures? Cool. Do you want double the mana from treasures? Cool. That's a pretty powerful effect. It does take some, you know, build up to actually get there. It is like on ETB or attack. You probably don't want to attack too often with this one, though, most likely. Like, the ETB is nice, but again, like, you don't have a lot of blink effects in these colors, like, at all. Oh, overall, like, yeah, sure, doubling up your treasure support is nice. There's also some other artifacts you can tap for mana. Obviously, I'd say overall it's like a C++. Okay? Next up, there we go. Gitrog Ravenous Ride, 6/5 frog that costs 5 mana in Golgari. Trample Haste deals combat damage to a player. You may sacrifice a creature that's out this turn. When you do, draw X cards and put X lane cards to your hand on the battlefield. Tap X sacrifice creature's power. This is one where, to me, this is probably, it's not the tippy top, it is not S tier, it is not A tier, but it's probably a B tier commander because, like, this, again, literally just takes one attack to just win the game. Like, you can just have, again, like, there are certain creatures out there that are pretty low to the ground that have, like, an absurd amount of power that just have, like, a massive downside whenever they attack or block, or, like, they can't attack or block or something like that. So you just, like, get their, like, Lord of Extinction, too, like, just that kind of thing. You just get them in play, you saddle this, and then all of a sudden you just get this through once, again, all this has to do is just hit once, and you're like, oh, okay, cool, I draw 20 cards, put 20 lands into play, not 20, I mean, like 20, even 10 lands, whatever it is, you are putting an absurd amount of lands into play, you have the chance to just win the game, essentially, by hitting once, because you are so far ahead of your opponents. Again, like, turn 4, you could just like, okay, yeah, I swing with this, I get through an opponent, and all of a sudden, I drew, you know, 10, 20, whatever it is, cards, dumped a bunch of lands into play, and I am 5 to 10 lands ahead of all my opponents. You're probably going to win the game then because you just, like, literally just sped way past where you should be at that point. Okay? Moving on. The Lord of Pain. 5/5 human assassin with menace for 5 mana in Golgari. Opponents can't gain life whenever a player casts their first spell each turn. Choose another target player. The Lord of Pain deals damage equal that spell's mana value to the chosen player. So, with this, yeah, this is quite painful. This is quite funny for you. Making so your opponents can't gain life, that's quite nice. And also, just like, okay, anyone gets to essentially, again, like, cast spells, and you're just like, yeah, I'm going to deal damage to the other players. At the very end of the game, though, obviously, it does kind of turn on you where it starts pinging you as well, so do keep that in mind. But yeah, it's kind of like a chaotic natured, like, hey, damage coming out really quickly type effect. Overall, like, this is probably, again, like, that C tier is getting quite packed, but again, that just sometimes happens. Like, I just don't, it's not a B tier. It's not D either. It's a C tier command. Okay, Ulalek, Fused Atrocity. 2/5 Eldrazi for really weird mana value, basically colorless or Wooburg, essentially, but a weird combination of all that. Devoid, whenever you cast an Eldrazi spell, you may pay 2 colorless. If you do, copy all spells you control, then copy all other activate triggered abilities you control, choose targets for the copies. Basically, yeah, double up some of those wacky, massive Eldrazi effects, or just double up the Eldrazi's themselves is kind of what you're going to be doing with this. 5 color Eldrazi has a more support these days than it used to. Like, you are in 5 colors. It is pretty powerful. Like, it's not as powerful as last. Like, it's not as powerful as the other Eldrazi commander we already talked about. So, like, with that, to me, like, we're already, and again, like, here's the thing just with this list. Like, to me, like, if it's gonna be a C tier commander, okay? Maybe I should have done this a bit differently, but like maybe I should have like the S tier, like I should have like this is like an S plus and everything else can go in the S tier that's from the A tier and then bump all these up one, and then maybe I could split the C tier up into like B and C in a little bit more, in a better fashion, I would say. But like, to me, Stelly is just kind of on its own. So like, I kind of feel good about that. I have to do that. Okay. Voya, Jaws of the Conclave, 5/5 Wolf for 5 mana in Naya. Vigilance Trample, Ward 3. This did not need Ward 3, Wizards. Whenever it attacks, put X counters on each creature you control or X the number of elves you control. Draw a card for each wolf you control. Card advantage, and also just a massive pump effect. You have a not very supported tribe with wolves, like, okay, but like an absurdly, maybe the most supported tribe of all time with elves, and all of a sudden you're like, yeah, okay, I get things out very quickly, I swing very quickly, I pump very quickly, this is protected itself, this can be a win condition itself, and also, yeah, I have extra combat spells as well to win with that, and of course I can draw a ton of cards as well. Yeah, this is a very solid commander. I would say probably a B tier commander compared to all the rest of them. Moving on. Igra, Eater of All, a 6/6 elemental cat for 5 mana in Golgari. Ward, sacrifice a food. Other creatures are food artifacts. This are other colors and types. Other types, I should say. Have pay 2. Tap, sacrifice is permanent. You gain 3 life. For a food is put in a graveyard from the battlefield. Put 2 counters on Igra, Eater of All. This is a really cool commander. The design is really sweet. And actually, turning your opponent's creatures into food is pretty huge because it turns them into artifacts. By making them into artifacts, they become very susceptible to wraths. There's certain wraths out there where it's like, oh, okay, cool, destroys artifacts. Great. All of a sudden, that is a one-sided board wipe for you. Like, sure, you take out your other creatures as well, but Igra is fine. And all of a sudden, again, when any of those foods are hitting the graveyard, any of those creatures in the graveyard, you get 2 counters on this. So, like, literally, it becomes, okay, I wipe the board and turn this commander into a one-shot KO. I take you out. And all of a sudden, yeah, you're gone. This has an absurd amount of counters on it. It's a one-shot KO for anyone. And they also have no blockers, too. So, yeah, this is a commander that, again, like, turning your opponent's creatures into food is just absolutely huge. So, I'm going to go with a B-tier commander. Moving on. Ulamog the Defiler, 7/7 Eldrazi for 10 mana. Cast a spell, target opponent exiles half their library, rounded up. Ward, sacrifice 2 permanents. Enters battlefield with a number of counters on equal to gray span value among cards in exile. Has Annihilator, X or X the number of counters on it. The limiting factors of this are such. It is colorless, and it is 10 mana. Obviously, you're going to invest a ton into ramping, essentially. You're also going to invest into other ways to get counters on this. But yeah, this is another one of those commanders like I talked about with the other Eldrazi commander that I've talked about earlier, much earlier. Hey, Annihilator, you just win the game. I mean, you just take out an opponent, I should say, if you just swing once with this. It's like, oh, okay, cool. I swing, you sacrifice 10 things. You're probably out of the game because you probably just lost all your things. Maybe you've got like a couple lands left, but not really. You're not going to be able to build back up. I don't even have to take you out with my swing. I don't have to take you out of the game, but you are literally out of the game because you can't play anything and you can't continue on. So overall, again, like its limiting factors are pretty apparent. Like once you get it out, once you get going, like you can just take players out. This is like threat number 1 when it's out. And of course you could get lucky and hit off the top of someone's library, like a massive like 12 mana card. Typically that's not in people's decks though for the most part. But yeah, you're probably going to hit like 5, 6, 7 for the most part. So that's still a huge amount of Annihilator. But yeah, you're going to need other ways to get more counters on it to really make it so like it can be more consistently like I swing once, you're gone. I swing once at you, you're gone. I swing once at you, you're gone. Overall, yeah, it's probably like a C plus B minus. We're going to go with a C tier commander though. And finally, of the Eldrazi Emrakul, they rolled a new, a 12/12 Eldrazi for 12 mana. When you cast a spell, gain control of all creatures target player controls. Gross! Flying protection from spells, permanents that were cast this turn. Leaves the battlefield, sacrifice all creatures you control. Pay 6 colorless. Madness. This is just like, okay, your opponents build up and you take over their board. That's basically what this is. This is your opponent's built up, and you're like, oh, okay, cool. You have the best army? No, I have the best army. Oh, wait, later on, someone else gets the best army? Well, I'll bounce this back to my hand, and then I will, discard it with one of these effects, and I'll just pay 6 mana to, well, sacrifice the army that I stole, and then just steal a new army. So this is kind of just like an absurd control commander in a way, where, like, it's really hard for opponents to commit to the board at all. It's also a 2-shot KO, easily a 1-shot KO. And also, it's very hard to deal with, too. This is, like, again, probably, maybe I'm overrating this one versus Ulamog, and maybe I should just put them both up a little bit. Maybe I'll move them both to B, okay? We're going to move them both to B. They do have downsides, obviously, they're massive mana values, but, like, they're game-changing when they're in play. And this one especially is like, okay, yeah, literally, like, oh, you've got a really good position over there. You've got a great army. That's my army now. That's just I'm just in the best position now. I have your army. I have a giant commander that is flying and a lot of protection as well. And literally, if anyone else builds up a bigger, better army, I'm just going to sacrifice the army I have, bounce this back to my hand, replay it for just 6 mana, and keep rinsing and repeating this until I win the game. So it's pretty crazy. Okay, and because I realized that I forgot probably around like 20 or so commanders left. I don't know if you heard the panic in my voice when that came up, but I forgot that Foundations in J25 Jumpstart 25 actually happened this year as well. So I added back in the 2 heavy hitters from that one, in my opinion, that I will be evaluating right here. Here we go. 2/2 Vampire Insect for 4 mana. Fumulous Infestation. Flying Death Touch. Whenever a player sacrifices a non-token creature, create a 1/1 black insect creature with flying. Whenever an insect, leech, slug, or worm you control attacks, if any player loses 1 life, you gain 1 life. Here's the thing. Do not underestimate this. That last part, like, is nice, but, like, don't think that this player is maybe playing, like, insect, leech, slug, worm, tribal. Like, yeah, bug, tribal. Cool. No, you don't do that. I mean, you can do that, obviously, but that's just like a nice additional benefit and a way to win the game, sure. But like the thing is, hey, any player sacrificing a non-token creature, you make a creature, that is absurdly good and even broken quite easily, where it's like, oh, okay, cool, I get out Dictate of Erebos or Grave Pact, and yeah, I've got plenty of tutors to tutor for those, and all of a sudden, any kind of a sacrifice effect, and it's like, oh, okay, I sacrifice 1 of my creatures, or even 1 of my insects, right? And then I force my opponent to sacrifice 1 creature each, 3 creatures in total. Oh, by the way, 2 of those or 3 of those or whatever were non-token creatures. Cool, I make more insects that I can then sacrifice. Basically, again, kind of like Maha, kind of like Judith, like you can just lock down the board where your opponents literally can't do anything about it. We're like, oh, okay, cool. You just can't play creatures, or essentially. You just cannot play creatures, and I'm making this massive army of insects. It's a gross commander. It's not Stella Elite standards, but it is a tier in my opinion. And then finally, Nib Mizzet Visionary, a 5/5 Dragon Wizard flying for 6 mana. And is it? You have a maximum hand size. Whenever a source you control deals non-combat damage to an opponent, you draw that many cards. Gross. I mean, they're literally, I think they printed in the same set, right? Like one that's just like a 1 mana deal 3 damage to each opponent. Okay, you just draw 9 for 1 mana. Obviously, I mean, this is like, it requires some setup to get there, right? But like, all of a sudden you're just like, oh, okay, cool. I just get like, you know, Sulfuric Vortex type cards in play. I get those permanent, you know, keep repeatable, dealing non-combat damage to opponents, and it just keeps happening again and again and again, and all of a sudden, like, I'm drawing at least, like, 20 cards with each trip on the table very easily. Of course, there's plenty of ways to win the game from there. I mean, you can go extra turns if you really want to, and be like, okay, cool, I drew another extra turn spell. No, really? I did another one. Oh, no, really? Or just, yeah, non-combat damage your opponents out, damage doublers, damage triplers. Yeah, this is pretty absurd. Or like Psychosis Crawler in play, draw all the cards, win the game. Yay! It also combos with another Niv Mizzet. Of course it does. But yeah, this has combos too. So overall, again, not Stella Lee levels. Nothing really is this year, but still a very solid A-tier commander. And with that, this episode is coming to a close. Comment below with your thoughts on it. And of course, as always, thanks again and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support.